first of all, gender is really important to define, because gender is not an abstract term. Gender is a relationship between men and women, and what they do and what they need to do and how their lives are organized. So climate change is a change in how the weather and how our approach to the impacts of weather affect our lives. So if we're looking at impacts, if we're looking at what we can do about it as our lives change, we need to know what men and women do. So the gender impacts of climate change means looking at the results, looking what happens when the climate changes, and adjusting our lives to it. And when we adjust our lives, we need to see what men and women do that's different and how they feel about it. Men are just as impacted as women in different ways. Perhaps women have been forgotten in the other debates, but now in this case, when we're looking at gender, we are forgetting that men also suffer, because they also go hungry, they also get tired, they also get depressed, they also lose their livelihood. So it's important to look at both men and women and the decisions that they make together to address climate change. I think that's what the gender is. Decisions and negotiating and finding new ways to adapt and to cope together. I work for the United Nations, and FAO is a specialized agency. So as a specialized agency working on agriculture, which includes forest, fishery, we try to see how the work that we do and the advice that we give to governments can have into it can take into consideration what men and women feel and what they need to do. So when we give advice, policy advice to the governments, then we can be more targeted, and we can say, if you're looking at climate change and the impacts on communities, look at what men and women do and how they're impacted. So I have chosen to work on this topic to make sure that the social dimensions of climate change form part of our policies. And the work that they do at the FAO and the UN is to make sure that all the advice in agriculture carries that profound element of social importance and how men and women will actually make it. I think it's really important not to forget that people are in fact the end result of our efforts. So the advice that we give at all levels, whether it is to researchers, whether it is to community organizers, whether it is to the UN, must be that people must be at the center of this debate, because we're talking about access, we're talking about issues of power, we're talking about well-being. So the advice that I would give is keep people in mind. Whatever it is that you do, remember people are men and women, different ages, different nationalities, different cultures. Whatever you do, think of who actually will be at the end of your activity, whether it's research, whether it is policy. Think about people, and I don't think then you can go wrong. I think that's the main thing that we're trying to communicate.